Aric Almirola might retire at the end of the 2023 season, and Michael McDowell could be his replacement heading into 2024. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into this really quickly. We're ahead by start talking about Kyle Busch, as it was reported by NASCAR yesterday that Kyle Busch is now one of just 9 drivers to have won 3 or more races in 11 different seasons. Kyle Busch, of course, one of the greatest NASCAR Cup Series drivers of all time, one of the greatest NASCAR drivers of all time. No surprise that he's done this. It's been incredible to see what he's done with RSS Racing. Obviously, just won the most recent race at Gateway. Huge congratulations to Kyle Busch on making history, and we'll see if he can do that next year in 2024, get his 12th different season with 3 or more wins. But Kyle Busch, I think, can win more races in the 2023 season. I think he's going to be a contender a lot more times going forward. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about LeBron James. As it was announced on Monday, that LeBron James will be the official starter of the 2023-24 Hours of Le Mans. LeBron James, of course, one of the greatest NBA players of all time. It's really cool to see he's going to be the official starter. I think it's really cool to see and he's going to have the opportunity to do that. Great to see different sports recognition coming into play. And really cool to see that LeBron James will be the official starter of the 2023-24 Hours of Le Mans. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Mason Flippy. As it was announced on Monday morning that Mason Flippy will drive his 66 for MBM Motorsports this weekend in the Xfinity Series race at Sonoma. Mason Flippy has made multiple starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the past. He's also leading the TCR Championship in IMSA currently at the moment as well. Flippy's got a lot of talent. We'll see what he can do. MBM struggled so far in 2023. They have made a lot of starts in 2023. So Mason Flippy can make the show. Obviously, they've got to qualify their win because they don't have a lot of owners points. But I think he's definitely got a chance to make it into the race. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kyle Weatherman. As it was announced yesterday that Kyle Weatherman will drive a 0-8 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Sonoma. Kyle Weatherman, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated drivers in NASCAR currently today. And I would love to see him have a full-time opportunity in NASCAR once again. I think he'll have a decent run. I know SS Greenlight has kind of struggled so far in the 2023 season, but I think he's got a good chance of running really good, and hopefully he can do a really good job in that 08 car this weekend at Sonoma. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Alex Abay. As RSS Racing officially confirmed they're having entry list changes, Alex Abay is going to drive the 29 for RSS Racing this weekend at Sonoma. This will be the first time RSS Racing this season has ran 4 cars. Now, initially, Kyle Sieg was on the entry list, but they have decided to make a change to put Alex Abay in. Meanwhile, Kyle Sieg is going to run the ARCA West race, I believe in the 46 maybe, for RSS Racing. But Alex Abay, really big pickup for RSS Racing, in my opinion. He's a really talented driver. He's a driver I think will be very competitive this weekend. And I think if RSS Racing gives him the right equipment, of course, this car has got to make it into the show due to qualifying. I think Alex Abay will make the show and will have a pretty good run this weekend at Sonoma. I think he's going to be a pretty big contender. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Brent Sherman. As out of nowhere, it was officially announced yesterday morning that Brent Sherman is making his first start in NASCAR since 2009, driving the 28 for RSS Racing at the Chicago Street Course event. Brent Sherman made 61 NASCAR starts in the past, but like I said, the last time he raced in NASCAR was in the Truck Series back in 2009. I think it was like a one-off or 2 starts in that 2009 season. This is absolutely a wild and crazy return, in my opinion. Brent Sherman, like I said, he has not raced in NASCAR since the 2009 season. So this is a really good opportunity for him. A little surprised with letting him come back in. But again, he has raced recently. I think the last time he raced in any sort of racing that involves NASCAR or ARCA was back in 2016. So it's a little bit more recent since he last raced. But the last time he raced in the Xfinity Series, I was back in 2007 or 2008. Nonetheless, a blast from the past coming back. Really cool to see him have the opportunity to come back. And hopefully he can do a really good job for RSS Racing at Chicago Street Course, though I think he may struggle. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about the South African Grand Prix. As it was officially confirmed to the media on Monday, the South African Grand Prix, that F1 has officially abandoned plans for a new South African Grand Prix due to their ties with a certain country that I'm not going to mention. The track that they were going to place was a Belgian Grand Prix. which is at Spa-Francorchamps. Now, obviously, the South African Grand Prix, F1 has been trying to expand back to the South African area, to Kalamali Circuit, but due to that situation, what's been going on over there, we're basically not going to have a race in South Africa. It's really unfortunate, but it is what it is. But if you're a fan of Spa-Francorchamps, you're going to be really happy to hear that that track is staying on the schedule, which obviously that's a legendary track. And there's been a lot of big wrecks there, and a lot of crazy wrecks have happened at that track. But still, it's good to see that that track's going to be around. It's a shame there's not going to be racing in South Africa, but nonetheless, really cool to see. Unfortunate news, but good to see the Spa-Francorchamps is still going to be on the schedule long term. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we are talking about Daniel Suarez. As it was announced on Monday that Daniel Suarez will drive the 07 for SS Greenlight Racing this weekend at Sonoma. I believe this will be Daniel Suarez's first Xfinity Series start in a couple years. And of course, we'll be driving for SS Greenlight Racing. Now, SS Greenlight Racing, I imagine the Trackhouse Racing will be working with that team, which I believe will be the first endeavor the Trackhouse has had in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. So this is going to be a really cool opportunity for Daniel Suarez. Obviously, Daniel Suarez also is the defending Cup Series winner at the track and won his first career Cup Series race in 2022, driving the 99 for Trackhouse Racing. I think Daniel Suarez will have a very, very competitive run. I think he'll have a shot to be up front. I think he'll have a solid race, and the car doesn't have any sort of reliability issues. I see Daniel Suarez contending for a top 5 or a top 10. I'm not expecting him to win, but I think he'll have a really strong run and will be a contender in the Xfinity Series race at Sonoma. I think he's got a good chance to run really good at Sonoma. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Spanish Grand Prix TV ratings. As it was reported by Adam Stern yesterday that ESPN got a 0.58 rating and 1.04 million viewers for Sunday's F1 Spanish Grand Prix. That is offering a 0.59 rating and 1.146 million viewers in 2022. And what's really interesting is, also according to Adam Stern, that was on ESPN 2. So it was down almost 100,000 viewers, despite the fact that it was on the main ESPN network and it was not on ESPN2 this year. I think a lot of that is the fact that fans are kind of tired of Max Verstappen dominating, unless people are watching Formula One as well, unless, of course, it's on the big ABC network. But I think because of the fact that we've been seeing less enthusiasm with Formula One and the racing hasn't been as good at Formula One compared to like 2022 or 2021, I think less people are tuning in. I think people are finally starting to realize that Formula One is not the most exciting sport overall. So it's not a major surprise, and it's not a major shock to me that the ratings are down. I was not surprised about that, and not shocked in any shape or form about that the ratings were down for this week. Not a big surprise and a shock. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Detroit Grand Prix TV ratings. As reported first by Nathan Brown, the IndyCar averaged 1.047 million viewers for the IndyCar race on NBC. That is the third most watched IndyCar race of the 2023 season. Obviously, the biggest race watched was the Indy 500. Then you had the Grand Prix St. Pete, and now the Detroit Grand Prix, which was on NBC, was the third most watched event. Now, it was, of course, way up in the ratings. I think they only had like a 0.23 rating last year and like 300,000 viewers, but that was on USA Network last year. This, of course, was on big NBC. So it's good to see at least over 1 million people have tuned into this year's event. Obviously, IndyCar has so far in the 2023 season has struggled in the ratings department. So it is good to see that the ratings at least are going up in that front, and good to see that a lot more people are tuning into the IndyCar event. Obviously, they probably did have a huge increase due to the fact that we did have the lightning delay in the Cup race. You had a lot of people like myself, while we were having the lightning delay and the weather delay going on during that, I was, of course, watching the IndyCar race in Detroit, getting caught up on that. So really good to see the ratings at least decent for the year. I think IndyCar needs to do better when it comes to their promotion going forward, but overall, I think it's pretty good, all things considered. The ratings are not terrible, and it's pretty good to see at least over 1 million people did tune in to the IndyCar race in Detroit. Really good stuff, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. Now, Richard Childress spoke to the media after Kyle Busch won his third race of the 2023 season. And Richard Childress spoke to the media, and he says that Kyle Busch is a pleasure to work with. And he's been a big asset to Richard Childress, said that both him and his fire presidents have worked together. People think that they work together really well. And he talked about Dale Earnhardt as well, how they worked together for over 20 years. Kyle Busch is having an incredible 2023 season. This is his best season since his 2019 Cup Series championship year, where he went on to win 5 races that year. Kyle Busch is already on track to maybe have a 6 to 8 win season. Honestly, with how fast Kyle Busch has been this year and having a better year, and with how he's on a revenge tour currently at the moment, I think Kyle Busch can go out and win a lot of races this season. It would not surprise or shock me if by the end of the 2023 season, if we're talking about a 6 to 8 win year for Kyle Busch. We're going to be going to Sonoma. He's really been good at road courses. You go back to earlier this year at COTA, he finished runner-up to Tyler Reddick. He's also been really good at super speedways. Probably should have won the Daytona 500, and he obviously almost did win a Talladega, and I think he could win a couple super speedway races. And you look at Atlanta, he was fast there as well, probably the fastest Chevy in that race. I think that Kyle Busch could win a lot of races this year, and I think he could be a championship favorite. I think he is going to make the championship for this year. He's got a lot of playoff points. I think he's got 16 currently playoff points right now, and I think he'll have more as time goes on. So nonetheless, I think Kyle Busch is an absolute favorite for the championship, an absolute favorite for the title, and really good to see that Kyle Busch is enjoying himself with Trackhouse Racing. I think he's having a lot of fun with it, and Kyle Busch seems happiest he's been in a long time, and nonetheless, I'm glad to see that Kyle Busch is having a lot of fun and enjoying his time at Trackhouse Racing, and Richard is happy to work with him. A lot of people didn't think it was going to work out, but so far, we've been proven wrong, and he's done a really good job with the team, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Worldwide Technology Raceway TV ratings. As according to Adam Stern, FS1 got a 1.27 rating and 2.16 million viewers for Sunday's Enjoy Illinois 300 at Gateway. That is down from 1.47 rating and 2.502 million viewers in 2022. Now, a lot of people are going to say that's really, really bad, but I'll be honest, I am not surprised. There are two major contributing factors to why the TV ratings were down for this year's event. Number one, the big lightning delay. Remember, there was almost a 2-hour lightning delay that, of course, you're going to have people that, when you have red flags and rain delays or delays in general, you're going to have people that are going to tune out of the race, and they're never going to come back. The second big reason why we've seen the ratings down is because of the fact that Chase Elliott once again was suspended this past week. Now, obviously, we're going to talk about Chase Elliott here in a little bit because he spoke to the media for the first time. But Chase Elliott had a lot of fans that boycotted the race because of him being suspended. So I'm not surprised to see that the TV ratings are down. Again, we've had a huge increase in TV ratings. We're down 300,000, which, considering that Chase Elliott wasn't there and we had a lightning delay, it's not the end of the world in my opinion. It's not a major shock and not a major surprise. And honestly, like I said, I'm not surprised or shocked that the TV ratings are down for this year's event. It's disappointing that they were down, but like I said, I'm not shocked or surprised that the TV ratings were down. Not a major shock and surprise the ratings were down for this year's event, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Andy Lally. As it was announced Monday late afternoon that Andy Lally will drive for Rick Ware Racing for the rest of the road course races in 2023, meaning that Andy Lally will drive 5 races for Rick Ware Racing in 2023. Andy Lally, for those who don't know, is an expert road course racer. He has won a lot of races. He's won the 24 Hours of Daytona. He's been a contender at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. And Andy Lally is also a really good road course racer in NASCAR as well, and tended to perform best on road courses when he raced in NASCAR. This is a really big deal, in my opinion, for Andy Lally to come in and race with Rick Ware Racing. He's obviously going to drive the 15 car this weekend at Sonoma. Now, he'll drive the 51 car in the 2 race that Jensen Button's going to drive. Obviously, Jensen Button is going to be driving 2 more road course races in NASCAR, that being, of course, Chicago Street Course in about a month from now, and then, of course, he'll be running at the Indy road course race as well. So Andy Lally will drive the 51 car there. But it's really cool to see Andy Lally wants to finish his career, because Andy Lally, I think, has said that this is where he wants to finish his career, is finishing in NASCAR. And Andy Lally did have some success in NASCAR. He never won a race, but Andy Lally did have success, and is a driver that deserves an opportunity to get a chance to finish his career. And I think Andy Lally will be a pretty big contender in those races, especially at Stewart-Haas Racing. I know that I think RFK has been helping a lot with that team this year, but we've seen his 15 car have some pretty decent performances. Ryan Newman had some pretty good speed at Darlington when he raced in that car, and also at Norfolk as well before he got crashed out. And I think this is a really big deal nonetheless of Rick Ware Racing to bring Andy Lally in. I think Andy could contend for top 15 or top 20 this weekend. I think he's got a chance to have a good run, and nonetheless, this is a really good shot and a really good opportunity for him, and looking forward to him have racing in NASCAR. Huge opportunity for him to race, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Austin Cindric and the Austin Dillon situation. Now, NASCAR did officially make the ruling in regards to the Austin Cindric and Austin Dillon incident. For those who did not watch the NASCAR Cup Series race at Gateway, you saw with about 20 laps ago, you saw that Austin Cindric got into Austin Dillon. But more evidence has come out and shown that it looked to me like a racing incident. In one angle, it looked like Austin Dillon came up. But another angle, it looked like Austin got into it and right-reared him down the straightaway. Now, Austin Dillon basically said that he should have been suspended. NASCAR did, like I said, though, made their ruling yesterday, and they officially confirmed that Austin Cindric will not be penalized and will not be suspended for the upcoming race at Sonoma Raceway. And as Selton Order did say to the media, they confirmed it was basically hard racing, and it was one of those racing deals that ended up happening. Austin Cindric went on social media and put out a statement yesterday in regards to the situation and actually showed the SMT data. And if you look at the SMT data, you can clearly see that Austin Dillon came up into Austin Cindric and basically kind of ended up wrecking himself. Austin Cindric also basically released a statement yesterday and kind of defended himself, kind of talk about the fact that he made contact, yes, but it wasn't intentional, absolutely not. Look, I think a lot of people are really interested to see if NASCAR was going to penalize Cindric because of what happened last week when Chase Elliott, he got suspended. But remember, there's a different situation here, what happened between Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson and Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin compared to what happened in this situation. I think it was just a mistake by Austin Cindric, obviously, but also Austin Dillon did come up. So you can't just put full blame on Austin Cindric. I think that the 3 team does have to share some of the blame here. You can't just put full blame on Austin Cindric in the situation. You got to get some of the blame to Austin Dillon as well. I get Austin Dillon being frustrating. It was probably frustrating in the heat of the moment. It was probably thinking about what happened last week as well. But I never thought really was intentional. I thought it was just a little bit of a mistake by him. I never thought it was intentional. The fact that some people think it was intentional, right? Even though Austin, he also made a mistake, is really, really frustrating to see that we got drivers now saying it's intentional. And you're going to have a lot of drivers that are going to try to use S&T data as a way, because I think it's really cool that we get to see the SMT data, but at the same token, at the same time, it could be used and it could become a dangerous precedent going forward. So I don't want to see the SMT data become this big story all over time and time again. I think Denny Hamlin could have opened up a can of worms, and it's going to be very interesting to see what happens going forward. But I'm very glad nonetheless to see that no one's getting penalized here. We can't keep penalizing drivers. I thought it was a racing incident and a racing deal, and no one should be penalized. I'm glad that no one is going to be penalized for this situation. Glad to see that no one is going to get penalized. And now we're going ahead to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Chase Elliott. Now, Chase Elliott has officially spoken to the media for the first time since the incident happened last week in the Coke 600, about a week and a half ago in the Coke 600. For those who need a little bit of catch-up but don't know up to this point, Chase Elliott intentionally right-reared Denny Hamlin down this dog leg during the Coke 600 near the end of stage number 2, and Denny Hamlin ran really hard in the outside wall and was shaking violently. After he got it and Denny Hamlin presented the data, NASCAR made the decision the next day on Tuesday to announce that Chase Elliott would be suspended for the upcoming race at Gateway. Now, Chase Elliott, like I said, did end up speaking to the media. He's also been granted a playoff waiver at this point, which isn't a shock or surprise. But Chase Elliott did speak to the media yesterday, and he says that he hates that he put everyone in that position at his own organization. He said he's glad that Denny Hamlin is okay, and he probably will have to think about decisions going forward. Now, Chase Elliott did not really apologize to Denny Hamlin, didn't give a half-ass apology. He just basically kind of said he hated that he put Denny in that position and wished that never ended up happening. Look, I think this is Chase Elliott's lowest point of his NASCAR Cup Series career. I get he's been frustrated this season. He hasn't had the raw speed that we all thought he was going to have when he came back, even though we thought it's going to take a little bit from the acclimate, like what happened to Kyle Busch. But Chase Elliott lost sight of the bigger picture. And look, he even agreed with the suspension, which I think is the right call, by the way, that he was suspended for that one race, because he lost sight of the bigger picture. And it was a very similar incident to what happened with Bubba Wallace and Kyle Larson, where Bubba Wallace, he right-reared Kyle Larson down the straightaway, basically almost in that dog leg. I know they're not the same racetrack as Vegas, but they're both the same mile-and-a-half configurations. So I think it was the right call, and I think Chase Elliott, this is going to be Chase Elliott's big learning point, is can he keep his emotions in check? He's going to have to do that because, again, like I said, he lost sight of the bigger picture. Chase Elliott has not ran all season, and he needs to get points. Chase Elliott now has put himself and his team in a must-win situation. Chase Elliott currently, I believe, is about 98 points below the cutoff line coming into this weekend, so he is going to have to win a race. I know that it's possible, especially that if they can run really good, because he is a good road course racer, there's no doubt Chase Elliott will be a threat at road courses for sure. But he needs to think about the bigger picture going forward if he's going to want to be a contender. So I hope that Chase Elliott learned his lesson from this. I hope he can recover from this situation and just think about a situation. He's a young driver. I hope he can learn. He's only 27 years old, so he does have time to learn and grow from this. And I hope this is his low point and he can come back from this and maybe come into this weekend and win. We'll see what happens going forward, but nonetheless, it's just good to see a Chase Elliott spoke to the media, though I will say it's interesting that he didn't really apologize for the situation, but again, I'm not surprised or shocked that he really didn't apologize for the situation. He hopefully will learn from this, he'll grow from this, and become a better driver in the future. Hope he can learn, and hope he can grow from this going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we are talking about Kamui Kobayashi. As it was announced early this morning that Kamui Kobayashi will make his NASCAR Cup Series debut at the Indianapolis Road Course, driving the number 67 for 23XI Racing. This would be the second time that the 67 car has raced in the 2023 season, as he raced in the Daytona 500 with Travis Pastrana. Obviously, we knew that the 23XI team had been planning to run a 67 car. We were not sure who was going to be the driver, but they're bringing in Toyota Gazoo Racing driver Kamui Kobayashi. If you don't know who Kamui Kobayashi is, you need to do some research, because Kamui Kobayashi, in my honest opinion, is an absolute legendary driver. He's a driver who has won the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and I've watched him race in the 24 Hours of Daytona as well. And he is an absolute incredible talent and an incredible driver. And he's known to be a driver that can be super aggressive, but also be very, very fast. And he has, of course, I think he may have raced GT cars in the past. He's also raced in Formula 1 as well. So you got a former Formula 1 driver who's coming into this series as well. But he's also extremely competitive, and he's going to be in a really strong car as well. I think Kamui Kobayashi could be a really big contender in this event at the Indy Road Course. I'm not expecting him to win because there's going to be a lot of really good drivers, but I could see Kamui Kobayashi getting a top 15 or even a top 20, maybe even contending for a top 10. Because 23XI Racing, they have shown speed at road courses. We've seen what Tyler Reddick can do. Of course, Tyler Reddick did win the Indy Road Course race last year, of course, driving for RSS Racing. But I think he's going to be a really big asset, not only for him, for Tyler Reddick, but also for Bubba Wallace as well, helping him out on road courses, because bringing him in is really big for the team. And now this brings big questions up as well for the future of this team, because with the 6-7 coming into play, this can mean not so far down the road, maybe Kurt Busch is going to come back, because it sounds like that Kurt Busch, he wants to race again. Maybe he comes back to Chicago Street Course. Who knows at this point what's going to end up happening, but nonetheless, I think this is a huge deal for 23XI Racing, and this is overall a huge deal for that organization as well. So I'm really excited to see that Kamui Kobayashi is making his debut. He joins a long list of drivers who've come in from Formula 1, other forms of racing. Guys like Jonathan Davenport from the dirt scene, Jenson Button, Kenny Wright have made their debuts. You got Shane Van Gisbergen in about a month from now making his NASCAR Cup Series debut with Trackhouse. You've had other guys come into play over the last couple of years make their debuts. And nonetheless, it's really cool to see. And Jordan Taylor, too, counting him as well. This is a huge deal for this team, and I'm really excited and pumped up to see that Kamui Kobayashi is going to be racing in NASCAR. This is a huge pickup, one of the best drivers in the world, and glad to see he's getting the opportunity to race in NASCAR. I think he's going to be a pretty big contender in his debut and contend for a really strong run. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, Trackhouse Racing is talking to Pass about maybe expanding in the near future. Now, we all thought there was no chance that this was going to happen. But according to reporter Jordan Bianchi, there could be a potential possibility of Trackhouse Racing expanding to 3 cars in 2024. And according to Bianchi, Corey LaJoie would be the favorite to get behind the wheel of a 3rd Trackhouse car heading into 2024 should Trackhouse Racing expand in 2024. Now, obviously, Trackhouse Racing does technically have a 3rd car. That, of course, is the Project 91 car that we have seen drivers like Shane Van Gisbergen, like I just mentioned a second ago, who will be making his NASCAR Cup Series debut at Chicago Street Course event. Also, we've seen Kimi Räikkönen get behind the wheel, and maybe other drivers in the future could have an opportunity to race with that team in the future. But it's interesting to hear that Trackhouse Racing, once again, is considering expansion. Now, obviously, the biggest thing that could hurt Trackhouse Racing expanding in 2024 is the charter system. Charters right now are skyrocketing and going through the roof. And there's other teams that are interested and do want to get charters. Junior Motorsports among those teams who do want to acquire a charter. And it wouldn't surprise or shock me if Ridge Racing is trying to acquire a charter made from Spire. So they maybe could expand and bring Austin Hill into their organization. But if they are to expand, Corey LaJoie would be a really decent driver to go with. I know Corey LaJoie did not have a really impressive start with Hendrick Motorsports, but I'm going to give Corey the benefit of the doubt. Corey LaJoie did have a really bad car. Obviously, well, he had a great car, but obviously the 19 was way off. They had no S&T data. They lost the internet. There were a lot of issues, but Corey was not too great, but he definitely had a disappointing run, finishing 21st. But I think this could be a really cool opportunity if they were to expand. If not Corey LaJoie, though, who could be a driver they could go with? Well, Carson Hocevar could be a really big surprise. Carson Hocevar has actually done simulator work with Trackhouse Racing. He just made his NASCAR Cup Series debut with Spire Motorsports, and he did an impressive job with that, running in the top 15 for a brake rotor issue. And he's a really talented driver who's been extremely impressive. What about other drivers? Maybe like a Michael McDowell somehow. That would be a wild shot. What about other drivers from the Xfinity? Maybe somehow they get like a Sam Mayer get an opportunity. Who knows at this point, but nonetheless, it's really interesting to hear that Trackhouse has considering expanding. Now, do I think that they are going to expand to 3 full-time cars in 2024? I'm going to say I'm 50-50 on this one. I'm not sure it could happen, but it also may not happen heading into 2024. I think anything's possible at this point, and nothing's off the table currently at the moment right now. Nonetheless, so it's going to be interesting to see what Trackhouse Racing does decide to do in regards to that. It's really interesting that they have considered expanding for 2024. They've talked about it in the past. They want to expand and have more cars going forward. They're not the only team that's talking about expansion. Obviously, 23XI Racing, they want to expand heading into the future as well. They could have a third full-time car. Nothing is impossible, and we could see something happen going forward. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, but Trackhouse Racing has talked about expansion, and they could expand heading into the 2024 season. We're going to have to wait and see what happens, though. In regards to that, we'll keep an eye on the story and follow up if more comes out. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we are talking about Aric Almirola. Now, Aric Almirola has been a lot of rumors around Aric Almirola's future after the 2023 season. Now, Aric Almirola spoke in a Zoom call with multiple NASCAR reporters, including Bob Pockers, and was asked by Bob Pockers about is he made a decision yet on 2024. Aric Almirola spoke to the media, and he says he still has no timetable on decision about 2024. He says he wakes up every single day and basically goes to work on a day-by-day basis, and like I said, has not made an official decision in regards to the 2024 season. If you want my honest opinion, I think there is a really strong possibility, and there's a growing talk, there's a really good chance that Aric Almirola at the end of 2023 is going to retire and will not return in 2024. Aric Almirola currently is 39 years old, and at the start of 2024, if he is returning in 2024, Aric Almirola will be 40 years old. And Aric Almirola, let's be honest with ourselves, is having a terrible 2023 season. Aric Almirola so far in 2023 has only scored 1 top 10 this season and sits 25th in the points, albeit Stewart-Haas Racing collectively outside of Kevin Harvick has struggled this season. And I just think Aric Almirola, though, is kind of going through the emotions, and I think he's just not having as much fun as he has been having. Remember, he was actually supposed to retire at the end of 2022, but he made the decision to come back in the 2023 season because of Smithfield. And Smithfield will be a big part. I think Smithfield's under a multi-year deal, so we could see Aric Almirola come back. But to be honest with how his body language has been, he's saying unsure, and he said it a lot recently, I personally think that this is going to be Aric Almirola's final season. I think Aric Almirola should retire while he is ahead. If he comes back next year, I think he is going to do worse than he does in 2023. And it would be nice to see, because again, let's be honest with ourselves, outside of winning the 2021 New Hampshire race, what has Aric Almirola really done? If you had to ask me, I don't think Aric Almirola's really done that much, to be honest with you. I think he has struggled. I don't think he has performed the best, and I don't think he has performed very, very great. And if you want my honest opinion as well, I think he's absolutely holding up that ride at this current moment right now for all the potential. Again, Aric Almirola, he has a different, basically, legacy. He has a pretty decent legacy. Obviously, he has gone on, to win 3 NASCAR Cup Series races. Of course, 2 of those with Stewart-Haas Racing, one of them being New Hampshire 2021, and obviously in 2018, he did win at Talladega, but that was because Kurt Busch basically ran out of gas and was surprised there wasn't a caution out for that situation. But like I said, if you want my opinion, I think Aric Almirola is going to retire at the end of this season. I just don't see him coming back. He's not performing very, very good. SHR collectively, they need to have an overall going into next year, and I think they're going to want to go for either a veteran driver, another one, or another young driver to come into play and take over that ride. A lot of people expect him to retire, and I think he is going to retire at the end of this season. So while I know some people may disagree with me, I think this is going to be Aric Almirola's final season. I thought it was going to be last year, then he made a decision to come back, but I think this time around he will make an announcement that he will retire at the end of the year. It won't surprise me if he does come back, but again, at this point, I think this is going to be Aric Almirola's final season in the NASCAR Cup Series, and I think he retires at the end of the 2023 NASCAR Cup Series season. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we are talking about Michael McDowell and Zane Smith. Now, according to Jordan Bianchi, those two right now are the favorites to replace Aric Almirola. Shall Aric Almirola retire? Now, what's interesting is both of them currently are under contract with Front Row Motorsports. Something interesting to note is that Zane Smith is under a multi-year deal with Front Row Motorsports, but also Zane Smith is under contract through 2026. Michael McDowell is only under contract with Front Row through 2023, so he could be a free agent at the end of the 2023 season, and he may leave Front Row Motorsports. Basically, SHR is looking at both of those drivers as elite candidates. Now, something interesting to note about the two drivers. Of course, Zane Smith, like I said, does have connections with that Stewart-Haas Racing group and does have a little bit of sponsorship funding. But Michael McDowell, let's talk about him for a second. Michael McDowell is one I really want to talk about. As I already talked about Zane Smith being a potential candidate, and Zane Smith would be a really good candidate. But let's talk about Michael McDowell first. Some people in the industry believe that Michael McDowell would be a really good driver to go to another solid organization. But let's be honest with ourselves. Stewart-Haas Racing has struggled. But let's be honest. I think Michael McDowell is a better driver than Aric Almirola and would be able to get more out of that equipment. Another thing that's interesting to note is that Michael McDowell, his crew chief in 2021 was Drew Blinkensderfer, who is currently the crew chief of the number 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. Remember, Michael McDowell won the 2021 Daytona 500, and at the time of 2021 had his most successful season in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think that if those two work together, Drew Blinkensderfer and Michael McDowell work together, I think that 10 car would perform a lot better and be a lot more competitive. And I think they could figure out some of the kinks and some of the issues. Because if you look at Michael McDowell, every year in the NASCAR Cup Series, outside of maybe some other years, he has gotten better and better and better. Now, Front Row's also improved their equipment, don't get me wrong, but Michael McDowell would be a really strong candidate for that 10 car. I'm not saying he would make the playoffs. I'm not saying he'd finish top 15 or 20, but Michael McDowell would probably do better than Aric Almirola. And I would love to see Michael McDowell have a shot and an opportunity at a really, really good car. Plus, like I said, he could be a free agent at the end of the year. Now, let's talk about Zane Smith as well. Zane Smith could also be a candidate, like I said, to drive the 10 car in the 2024 season. And Zane Smith would be a pretty solid driver to go with. The thing is, though, like I said, Zane Smith is under a multi-year deal currently with Stewart-Haas Racing, Front Row Motorsports right now. So, in a perfect scenario, what could be some options? Well, the first option you have is you have Zane Smith go to the 10 car. You have Michael McDowell remain in the 34 and Todd Dillon in the 38. Michael McDowell is getting closer to the end of his career, so maybe that's not the best scenario to go with. The second option is you lose Zane Smith and you basically put Zane Smith in another team, and you lose Todd Dillon, basically. Or you have Zane Smith in the 38, Michael McDowell in the 34, but you lose Todd Dillon, or Todd Dillon ends up going to the 10 car, and that could be possible. But my scenario is you have Michael McDowell drive the 10 car in 2024, and you have Zane Smith to go to the 34, and Todd Dillon in the 38. I think that'd be the best for both parties, and Todd Dillon, I think, also needs to be in Front Row. Now, it is noted that they have not worked on a contract with Todd Dillon at this moment for the 2024 season. So Todd Dillon could be a free agent at the end of the year. But if I'm Front Row, especially with how good Todd Dillon has been running with the team, I am certainly trying to work to get him back in that ride. Now, Front Row doesn't go with Michael McDowell or Zane Smith. Who could be some potential candidates to take over the 10 car? Well, you have Riley Herbst. Riley Herbst currently at the moment is driving for Stewart-Haas Racing in the Xfinity Series. I know the last few months have not gone good, but he was pretty impressive with Ricker Racing in his debut at Daytona. So he could be a candidate. Another candidate could be Cole Custer. Cole Custer, obviously, he's currently running Xfinity Series driving a 00 car right now. He could also go to the 41, and maybe Ryan Preece moves to the 10. But Cole Custer could be another candidate. Another potential candidate that we could see is John Hunter Nemechek. Now, John Hunter Nemechek, obviously, there's been rumors about John Hunter Nemechek. He has been multiple times rumored to go to the 10 car in the past, so he could be a candidate. And a wild one could be Ty Majeski as well. Ty Majeski is a very talented driver who's ran really, really good in the Truck Series, and someone I think some teams could be looking at as a possibility. Another wild out of the realm possibility is Hailie Deegan. She's got sponsorship and funding. We don't know if Smithfield's in play. I don't think she's ready for Cup, but she could be a potential possibility as well. But if you want my prediction currently at this moment, I originally thought it was going to be Zane Smith, who I thought it was going to be. My personal opinion is I think it's going to be Michael McDowell, who's driving the 10 car in 2024. I think Michael McDowell deserves a shot and opportunity in a better car. I think that SHR might be a little better than front row, but front row is definitely catching up to SHR. And I think the scenario would be that Zane Smith goes to the 34 and Todd Gillen, he goes to the 38 car. It's going to be very interesting to see what Stewart-Haas Racing ends up doing in the 2024 season. But I think Michael McDowell will join SHR in 2024. I think he'll take over for Aric Almirola, who's going to depart. I think McDowell will sign a multi-year deal with SHR as well and finish his career with Stewart-Haas Racing and better equipment. Because Michael McDowell has not had a top-tier shot or a decent car since 2010 when he drove for 2011, I should say, when he drove in for Kyle Busch, who got suspended. Nonetheless, I think it is going to end up being Michael McDowell, who drives that 10 car in 2024. So that is going to be today's NASCAR news and motorsports news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on so if I win a video, does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, as per my Patreon as well. Let's go over that and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who do you think is going to drive the 10 car in 2024? Do you think it's going to be Michael McDowell or Zane Smith? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what are your thoughts about Aric Almirola? Do you think he will retire at the end of the year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. I don't think I'm having any other videos coming out on the channel. Some major news breaks throughout today. Tomorrow there's going to be race picks for the Cup Series race at Sonoma. Friday there's going to be a NASCAR news video like on the channel. And I think on Saturday I'm going to have a video revolving around Carlos Senospar where I think he should drive in 2024. Sunday, and of course we'll have the Xfinity Series race review. And then on Sunday we'll have the NASCAR Cup Series race review from Sonoma as well. Maybe another video dropping that day. And then we're going on break and I've got a big project dropping about a week from today. Make sure to tune into that when that comes out. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.